Hi everyone, it's Don and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Well, I've said it many times, one of my favorite cruises over the last 5 years was when I sailed to Japan. I did 2 cruises kind of back to back. I left from Vancouver, Canada, and I took up Trans-Pacific to Japan. Then I flew over to China and I stayed in China for a week, and then I took another cruise back to Japan, back to China, and then flew back out again from there. Had a great time, one of the favorite cruises, and it was on the Celebrity Millennium. Well, just a little while ago, the Celebrity Millennium was overbooked, and a lot of people were said, it's not a big deal. People were asked to move and shift their cruise. Well, guess what? It turned out to be a pretty big deal for this couple. So I've reported recently that over the past few months, the Wonder of the Seas has had numerous overbookings, and they've had to ask people to lift and shift and compensate people to move their cruise. And, normally that's enough, right? That's normally enough to not have anybody miss their cruise. And the same thing happens for the Celebrity Millennium, part of Royal Caribbean Group. It happened on that ship as well for a cruise in Japan. Well, the trouble is the Celebrity Millennium is a much smaller ship than, say, the Wonder of the Seas, and in a destination that's thousands of miles away from North America. And when you're that far away, you usually plan these trips well in advance, and it's not so easy to just, I'll just go next week, or I'll just, I'll book that a few months further down the road. You're flying all the way to Japan. It's a big deal. You have to make previous arrangements. A lot of people go there for a week ahead of time or a week after. If you're going to fly that far, you're going to probably do more than just jump on a cruise and then jump off. And that's what this family was planning on doing. Well, unfortunately, not enough people took up the offer to lift and shift their cruises. This cruise passenger was a booking of 3 people, and they were offered to move their cruise. Unfortunately, the other cruises just didn't fit in with their schedule, and the only one they could have done would have been a year and a half roughly away from the date that they were actually supposed to sail. Now here's the trouble. When they contact their airline to move, try and pay a penalty fee or whatever they have to do to move the airline flights and things like that, well, a year and a half out, there are no flights. You can't book a flight a year and a half in advance. So they can't lift and shift their airlines. So they're going to lose the airline tickets if they don't have insurance. And they don't have insurance. They're non-refundable, non-transferable airline tickets. Also, they had prepaid their hotel stays. And now they're out all that money. And I know the first thing you're going to say, well, I hope they had insurance. Well, I don't know if they did. Not for their hotel, not for their airline. They might have had their cruise insurance, but the cruise is going to give them their money back. What they're not going to do is give them the money for the airlines and the hotels and the other expenses they had planned. Now, what they did offer was about $500 in compensation, but the family is out $6,000 in expenses. So while a lot of people kind of shrug off, saying it's no big deal, that the overbooking is happening on the cruise ships, much like in airlines, right? How many times are you sitting in an airline and you hear that your plane is overbooked and they're offering people compensation to fly on another flight, right? You have $200, $300, and the closer you get to the flight, less and less people, the higher that money goes up. Well, on cruise ships, they just offer you one thing, and they usually try and shift everybody around. However, well, what happens if you don't have enough people take you up on that offer? You actually cancel people's cruises. And the farther away from the home country that you cancel people, the harder it is for them to reschedule. And places like Japan, Australia, Europe, places that are going to take on an exorbitant amount of flight time and taking you, a lot more planning to go than to run to the Caribbean or run to Alaska, is definitely more expense and more planning. And yeah, I still think it's a very big deal that cruise lines are allowed to oversell their cabins. I don't think airlines should be allowed to do it. I don't think, cruise ships should be allowed to do it. By the way, here in Canada, the airlines are not allowed to overbook. They are only allowed to sell the seats that are there. And when you hear, say, an Air Canada flight offering to move people, it's because another flight was canceled and they're trying to keep groups of people together, and they're offering you to move so they can keep those people together on a flight. And it's not because they're overbooked. However, in the United States, that's perfectly acceptable, and they're allowed to move to oversell the planes. I don't understand that, how they're allowed to do that. And cruise ships, I've never heard of this phenomenon until after the pandemic, right? I reported for 3 years on this channel before the pandemic. Never once had I ever had to say that a cruise ship was overbooked and people are being moved and things like that. Well, suddenly I'm reporting on it a lot, and here is a perfect example of somebody losing out on a lot of money because they can't move their cruise. And again, insurance, if you had cancel for any reason insurance that covered your entire trip, you're okay. But if you only, like a lot of people, get that cruise insurance that covers the cruise, it doesn't cover your hotel and it doesn't cover your airfare. Now myself, I'm flying to Europe on Tuesday. Well, I have my cruise insurance, but I also have my airline cancellation insurance that I booked, because the price of flights going to Europe right now are $5,000 and $6,000, which is incredible how expensive it's gotten to fly. Before the pandemic, I flew to Europe on $700 return. Now it's $5,000, $6,000. That's how much flights have gone up. It's incredible. So a word of warning, if you're going on a long trip, you might want to make sure you got your hotels and your airfare covered in your insurance as well. And the cruise insurance doesn't cover that. You have to get a third-party insurance or get the insurance through the airline as well. Well, I hope you appreciate this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Want to see more tips, more tricks, more travel vlogs from around the world? Hit that subscribe button. Until next time, have yourself a safe and a great vacation.